from a stream drawing studio interview that I did with Miggs Burroughs with the Westport Public Library in Westport, Connecticut. And we were talking about the pandemic, so I did a stream drawing. This is in May 2020. I did a stream drawing on the theme of the pandemic and some of the issues that come up for us, maybe a little bit personally and collectively. First thing I saw was a lion, and the lion faces the future. And lions are, really symbolic of courage. So, of course, moving forward with courage, having the traits of the lion. Definitely, we want to have courage moving forward. It sort of forces us to have courage. It's hard not to want the world that we once knew to come back, and it really sort of probably won't be ever the same exactly. I think we're all kind of seeing, in a way, everyone wanting to make it go back to be the way it was. So what we've been through has been, for me, this was an image of a firefighter and kind of the cowboy pioneer. So I wrote in the notes some archetypes that come up for us. It has been a sort of emergency management issue. We've been in emergency mode for a few months here. Ironically, while we also let down our first responders, we did not have what they needed. We weren't prepared, yet we've been in emergency mode. So this all is shaped like a heart too. I think it calls us to ask ourselves as a society, what do we really value? When we're not prepared for an emergency, we didn't have enough N95 masks, we didn't have enough, ICU beds, we didn't give our first responders what they needed. We do have to ask ourselves as a society, what do we prioritize, what do we care about, what do we love about who we are? Some of the biggest questions. And the cowboy, we're all kind of having to be pioneers right now in our spirit, because we don't really know where we're headed. We don't know what's up next. We have to be rough and ready to a degree. I noticed that this is kind of a third eye here too. We're having to use our intuitive knowing a little bit more. So I guess as we try to normalize, maybe we're feeling a little bit less like we're in emergency mode, but we really don't know. We really do have to be pioneers, rough and ready. We don't really know what's up ahead. So that's kind of what's activated right now. And let's see if I need to move forward up here in the stream drawing. Another issue of ethics, I think, for us to think about. I saw what reminded me of the Grandma Moses painting, Grandma Moses in the rocking chair. It's really a faint image here. But I feel like this whole pandemic has caused us to question how do we respect the elderly, the most vulnerable amongst us. So many are in group homes. And it's not just elderly in group homes, it's those of us who live differently, with differences, with maybe cerebral palsy or other differences, and so they may be in group homes but young, but when there's a pandemic, they're the most vulnerable again in a whole other way, because when a pandemic sweeps through a group home, as we've seen, a lot of people have died. And, we did have the Lieutenant Governor of Texas even say that old people would be happy to die. Grandma and Grandpa would be happy to die to keep the economy strong. So I don't know if we really want to avoid that discussion. How do we feel about the elderly? How do we as a society ethically handle these situations about, our way of seeing the vulnerable amongst us? And are we for euthanasia when a pandemic comes through or otherwise? Do we think it's okay to say, well, we die anyway, so let the elderly and the vulnerable die? Or do we say, no, we have to protect the weakest amongst us? These are big questions. They're extremely important, and I don't think we can be healthy if we don't solve some of these issues. So that's big. I really liked that in this little area here where I felt like it was saying, get back to nature, use your intuition, your inner guidance more right now. I saw a sailboat on the water, which is great for Westport because it's a coastal town. I love that, I miss the coast when I'm not walking along it. I'm back and forth. My sons are there. And so I thought it was particular to Westport, but it's also really symbolic for everybody. It's a universal symbol of the water, which is consciousness, and the wind working with the unseen forces, again, using inner guidance, using intuition, using quiet knowing. Even if we've been too panicked or worried or busy during this pandemic, a lot of people have talked about having downtime or having time to reflect. That's working with the unseen. That's dealing with the wind, you might say, or the spirit. Quiet knowing, being able to reflect more, being able to navigate life in a different way from before, not just being so on task that there was no time to reflect or seek out introspection. So I think this is a time to not only that, but have some recreation, have some playful time, if possible. It's really important. And connected with that was an image of, when you feel threatened, this is like a sharp triangle going into the solar for this figure here. When you feel threatened, unsafe, unless you're physically threatened and you have to struggle or flee at the moment in reality and literally, if you're otherwise feeling threatened, as in a pandemic, like unsafe emotionally, like I don't know what my future holds, or I don't know if I'll have a job, or I lost my job, or do I feel safe going to my job? I don't know. It looks like my college is canceled. What's my future going to be like? Will I live? Will my family members live? All the things that a pandemic like this brings up. This figure is also not only just feeling threatened, but also in a posture as if to be maybe playing the piano or doing something creative. And I think when we don't have the answers or when we feel afraid, the best thing to do is to still, even in a feeling of fear, or even when feeling threatened emotionally without the answers, sometimes the best answer is to be creative. A lot of times that's when an answer arrives, when you just stop thinking about it and just go be creative. It's like coasting on intuitive, spiritual, creative imagination. That's when an answer arrives, when you just don't even expect it. So don't think you have to always mentally solve all the answers and problems. Sometimes just getting creative like a child and being playful actually not only makes us feel better, but it does sometimes bring solutions to problems. And one more image. There was a mermaid here, and I thought about mermaids and what they symbolize. Okay, so mermaid was good again for Westport, since there's a body of water there, the Long Island Sound. Mermaids represent being in an in-between place because they navigate between land and water. And we're so much in a transitional place. But the difference between humans and mermaids is mermaids are comfortable with being unsettled. They can move between land and water, water and land, and be okay with being unsettled. They're fluid, they're feminine, they're kind of sexy and seductive. They like the unsettled nature of being in between. Whereas most people, we don't like being in between all that much. We either want our feet on the ground when we're, we want answers, we want solidity, we want some kind of sense of security. And if we're on the water, then okay, that's what that is. But we don't really know what to do with being in between things and being comfortable, at least mostly. The other thing about the mermaid is mermaids really are pretty independent creatures. So I guess this is an interesting thing to contemplate with this time period now, because we do have to be so fluid. We do have to be independent, because we have to think about what the world means to us and what we mean with our place in the world while we're unsettled. And be comfortable with being uncomfortable a little bit, learn how to be. And we are in kind of legendary times. It's very interesting. So these are some of the themes that came up in this stream drawing that I did during the interview with the Westport Public Library in a studio tour. And this is ElaineClayton.com. You can refer to the book, Making Marks, Discover the Art of Intuitive Drawing. Thank you.